Welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. Hey, Sukh, welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. How are we doing?
All right, Danny. Thank you very much for having me on.
No, not a problem. So I guess we know each other a little bit from like the Mind Chimp group and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the idea of today's session, wow, it's like a coaching session. The idea of today's podcast really is getting to know a little bit more about you and stuff. So before we get into that, usually I ask my people who jump on the podcast to come up with a logline or a summary of who they are and what they're about. Do you know what yours is?
No, and in truth, it's something I keep revisiting over and again, because it's just one of those things where as time goes on and as experience builds and you develop your career, there's lots of things that end up being important to you, and so I find it hard to answer like what's your thing, right? It's like I don't really know. So most people will know me for learning development. I've been in and around the field for about 14 years now, and I've had lots of roles in that time, right? And I've spanned also across OD as well as L&D. So what's my tagline? I'm a senior learning and development professional. I have a big interest in positive psychology, emotional intelligence, mental health. Those are topics which are all important to me, as well as diversity and inclusion as well.
Okay.
So maybe that can suffice for now.
Yeah, no, that sounds good to me. So,
okay.
When you was in school, so the teacher would ask you kind of, what is it you want to be when you kind of grow up? What was the answer you'd given?
So I remember clearly because my kids asked me this question not long ago as well. It changed quite a bit from wanting to be a lawyer to wanting to be an architect to wanting to be an astronaut to a pilot. So quite a lot of different things.
Okay. And so, wow, an astronaut. What made you want to be an astronaut? What was the kind of the driver behind that, do you think?
I've always been fascinated by space. It's a truly magnificent and wondrous thing that exists out there and that we're part of in a wonderful set of ways, and that there are people who go up there on a fairly regular basis to explore and figure it all out. That's quite exciting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So before we jump into kind of a little bit more about you, what I tend to ask my guests is to pick 4 numbers from 1 to 100.
Okay.
You can pick any you want.
33.
Yep.
62.
Okay.
7 and 89.
89. Perfect. We'll come back to them a little bit later. So,
okay.
So I guess, we know each other from a group and we've spoken, we tend to speak quite a bit as well, I think.
Yeah.
But for the people who don't know you, maybe give us a bit of a brief bio of kind of where you've come from. Are you from your professional, like where you've come from and what's brought you to where you are right now? Maybe, shed a bit of light on you.
Okay. Happy to. So back in 2003, I completed master's degree in occupational psychology. A module in that was on training and development, and I really enjoyed it. It was the one module where I thought that's where I can probably do more stuff with. After I had completed that, I went out and sought roles in training specifically. So I guess I've had a bit of a different route into the profession in that I actively sought it out. There's not many people who choose to do that. For most people, they'll enter it via a HR route or through some kind of ops route where they've come into the profession. Where I wanted to start it off as my career. So I got a role with QVC, the shopping channel, as a training officer in that team. That was a great set of experiences there. Had a really good team, had a really good manager, really helped develop what I thought and understood about training and development as it was at the time. From there, left and my twins were born, my twin boys, and so I took a few months off to help take care of them and help to do the childcare piece for several months. Then went and joined a training outsourced company. They were called the Outsourced Training Company, a highly original name.
Okay.
And they had as their main client Ford Motor Company, and so I did consultancy work and facilitation work for them. That was full on. It was an 18-month period of pretty much between 3 and 5 days a week of just non-stop training delivery. And at that time, we're talking the mid 2000s now, mid to late 2000s. It was, at that time, it was all about the face-to-face delivery. There wasn't really an option for digital or exploring what digital could do because we didn't really have the tools to allow for that. There was e-learning, but even then that was still too niche at that time to do anything proper with. So didn't really ever explore anything around that. Then from there, got made redundant because Ford Motor Company suffered greatly with the credit crunch in 2008, and our whole team got laid off. I was fortunate enough after a few, not long, to get a role with a digital marketing and tech agency, now called Digitas LBI, and that was a really good set of experiences. Joined there as an L&D business partner, and probably my first cut into properly looking at L&D as a strategic role within the business and how to really help an organization think about its L&D offering and what they can do with it. And that was really cool. It was just me, though, in the sole role for a long while. And then eventually we merged with another company, and I didn't see my role fitting with what they needed to do anymore, so I left.
Okay.
And from there, I did a very short bit with the NHS, with Southend NHS Trust. And that was a really good experience, even though it was only short-lived. Had a really good team around me, and really started to explore what we could do with virtual learning environments and using tools like GoToMeeting as a primary tool to be able to help with that. That, like I said, that was short-lived. From there, moved to a role with a housing association, which are based over in Camden. They're called One Housing, and I headed up the OD function there. And that was a great set of experiences. Really got involved in some really broad-reaching work around employee engagement, performance management, leadership management training, the LMS management, L&D delivery, and proper budgetary control and management as well. And so really got to cut my teeth in a more senior position and really helping to understand how do things need to work in a business which is fairly sizable. There were about 1,500 people there, 1,300 actually. So there's quite a number of people to work with in lots of different departments. And then from there, unfortunately, role got made redundant last year, and then spent the summer with my family, actually, with my kids when they had the time off. And over that period of time, got a role where I'm working now with a company, Read Business Information. And I'm here as talent development partner, which means I look after all things to do with learning, development, digital learning, management training, leadership training, and bespoke help for development of programs for the different business units that we have.
Okay,
so that's a potted history.
Yeah, and what a history, I guess. What's just looking over kind of your bio as such.
Yeah.
You've gone into kind of different areas of work. When I say areas, I mean arenas kind of within NHS to where you are now and stuff.
Yeah.
Is there any common traits what you see? Maybe it's positive, maybe it's constructive. Is there any traits what you've seen throughout each like stepping stone, which is kind of you've seen?
So one of the things I've set out in my career to do quite purposefully is that anytime I move from one place to another, I've always been very clear in myself that it was going to be a different industry in a different sector. And that's primarily because I don't want to be stuck in one frame of thinking of the world, and and that's just my own choice, in that I appreciate having a diversity of experience, and that allows me to draw on valuable experiences from very many different settings, and how they can be thought of and applied to in the different organizations that I've been part of. And so to your point, the challenges that all organizations face are very similar. They all have challenges around how do you engage people well with learning and development, because it's never really made a clear offering. It's, if there are L&D functions and there is good learning provision provided, then people know how to access them, because some people will know how to access them, but it's the same challenge every organization faces, that you need people to turn up to, if it's virtual or if it's in person. They still need to attend training. They still need to be present and go through some kind of learning experience, learning program of something. That challenge remains everywhere. I haven't seen anyone get that right. There's challenges around LMS usage. No one likes using an LMS, and unfortunately, it's one of those necessary evils in organizations that helps to do certain parts of the administration and the logistics planning for L&D, but it's also become a default place for other stuff, and it's not the right tool for doing other activities. So that challenge I've seen everywhere, and it just doesn't change. There's similar challenges that every organization faces around new managers when they join a new company, or if they're promoted into roles. They want to know how to be a good manager. That's the same thing that is present everywhere. And no organization is unique in that way. Everyone has the same sets of, how do I have one-to-ones? What am I supposed to discuss in that situation? How do I develop my coaching skills? How do I give good feedback? How do I have difficult conversations with people? That's the same stuff. Doesn't matter where you go, you need to do that as a manager. And then as you go up the kind of seniority levels, the same challenges are there as well for leaders across organizations. When you're a leader, when you're a senior person in the organization, you have to understand more around the strategic elements of how to lead a department or a team, and how to invest in them and motivate them and engage them so that they can achieve some really, really good stuff. That, again, that's not a unique set of stuff. It's quite a similar set of challenges. The thing that is always different is the context in which those things are relevant. And that's the piece which I've always found fascinating, is what's the context of what leadership looks like in this organization, or management looks like in this organization, or learning looks like in this organization. Because although the challenges are similar, it doesn't mean that the approaches that worked previously wherever I've been will work here, because the context is completely different.
Okay. Great explanation of it. So if I was to say, kind of looking at your whole, maybe, and you can take, these questions can be personal or professional, take it however you like, really. What's been your positive, negative? What's been the most important positive, negative? And when I say that, I mean, in the moment it looked like a very negative situation, and it was like, oh, where do I go from here? But then maybe a day, a week, a month, a year down the line, it's actually been one of your most positive moments in your life. Help shape something new. Is there any what jump out?
I'll have to think on that one.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We can come back to that. Not a problem. So let's go with a different note and let's change gears a touch. So,
okay,
if I was to say to you, right, what if you had to give a gift of a book to 3 people? What book would it be?
Oh Christ! If I had to give the gift of a book,
yeah.
And
again, this doesn't need to be a professional, or it can be.
I'm not thinking necessarily professional either. I'm just trying to think what are the books that I've read where I thought that was really impressive, and it's got lots of good stuff in there that people can learn from. Um, so I guess one book is either Freakonomics or Super Freakonomics, written by Stephen Dubner and Stephen Levitt. And when I've read both of the books when they've been released, and what they help me to understand is that there's ways to think about the world which um, which which may not come naturally for most people. And what I mean by that is that the way that they present data and information and insights and research into how people behave, what they think what people say they're going to do versus what they actually do. And it's a really insightful book about human behavior from a group of researchers who are looking at things from a behavioral economics point of view. So for me, that's really fascinating because it provides a different lens. In the L&D world, we can get really caught up in models and theories and personality assessments and psychometrics and all sorts of other weird and great tools. They are all really useful in certain ways. What is also helpful is to understand what are the other contexts that, if we understood those well, it enables us to understand human behavior in a different way. So I think either of those books would be a good one because they both touch on very similar approaches and a narrative style of writing, but they just talk about very different instances across the two. So it's quite interesting stuff.
Okay. Do they have a podcast?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
the Freakonomics podcast. Yeah, I don't listen to it, but I've there's another person that I'm not sure if you know, Ross Garner. He's a big fan of the Freakonomics podcast. Yeah. And he talks about it regularly when they talk about on the Good Practice podcast.
Yeah, it's, I think I've dipped in and out of that podcast, but never really been like a true subscriber.
Okay. Yeah, it's not one that in truth, I don't know what the podcast is like and how it's different to. I mean, I imagine it covers similar things to what the books talk about. It's just I enjoy the narrative style of the books. They're quite easy to read.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's one book. Another book.
You could give this book to 3 people, and then that's it. That's your question ticked off, I guess. I guess the idea of this question is kind of to think, it's mainly just to understand what book impacts you and kind of what you got the most value from. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess that's one. There are good business books around. There are some good learning and development books around as well. So, and the reason I haven't gone to one of those or recommended any of those particularly is that it depends on what the person wants to do with their L&D knowledge and development of their skills, because that'll focus your mind in a different way, and it means that you'll want to read the right kind of thing that will help develop that further for you.
Yeah.
So that's why I haven't gone to one of kind of an L&D book.
That's cool. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say some words, and I want you to tell me what comes to mind when I say these. Okay.
Okay.
So let's go first with, positive language.
Helpful, progressive, useful. Yeah, I think those.
Yeah. Okay.
Those. Yeah.
Next one, mental health.
Okay. Important. Still a taboo subject for many. Still hard for many to acknowledge and discuss well. Lots of stigma still attached to the topic. Some really good information and advice available out there about how to help people who do suffer with mental health challenges.
Okay. Diversity and inclusion.
Uh, Again, important, and I think we're on an ever continuing journey with what those topics are, in our understanding of what we think those terms mean, how we think we act in relation to those terms, what it can allow for, and what they can aspire to, or what people can aspire to when they try and understand those things better. It can also be quite controversial as well. People have very strong opinions about what they think those terms mean and how people should act against those terms as well.
Okay, and we'll go with one more. Let's have social media.
Incredibly powerful set of communication tools and methods to be able to engage with people just from all over the world. Absolutely unprecedented in the level of access to people, to knowledge, to insights in a way we've never experienced in the history of mankind.
Okay.
The speed at which you can connect with current affairs, what people are saying at important events, it's all quite impressive, and we've got a lot of work to do still in that space to help keep it safe so that people aren't receiving trolling behavior, that they're not subject to harassment, that they're not being treated unfairly because of their use of social media. So there's a lot to still get through and make better. So that's where I'm at with it.
Okay, and let's have one more actually. For Free Good Podcast.
Yeah. It's my podcast that I started a couple of months back, and it's a space for me to be able to share and discuss topics around positive psychology, resilience, well-being, mental health, and emotional intelligence.
Perfect. So let's jump into that then. So for anyone who hasn't listened to the podcast, I highly recommend it. It's a great podcast, and it touches upon a lot of. I think one of the ones which jumped out to me from recently was the communities one, which I know we spoke about. Well, where did the name come from first? Where did that come from?
So first of all, thank you for listening. That's very good to know, and always kind to hear about as well. Where did the name come from? So there's a particular approach within the practice and research from positive psychology, so as a practice, what it tries to encourage is how to help people cultivate a set of behaviors which develop more positive feeling over a longer period of time, as opposed to looking for sharp snaps of kind of happiness in certain ways. And the reason for that is because happiness is a transient, it's what we would call as a kind of a transient emotion, in that you can feel it one moment and the next moment it can be gone. And that doesn't mean that and so what that means is that it's really hard to keep happiness at a level, because you never know what's going to affect how happy you feel or not. What you can affect and what you can impact on is how good you feel over a longer period of time. So if I'm feeling particularly good, it's probably because there's a set of good things that have happened. So how can I do more activities that help me feel good for longer? And there's a practice called 3 Good Things, which is at the end of each day that you look back on and write down what were the 3 good things that happened to me that day. And when people do this over a sustained period of time, it helps to cultivate a different set of behaviors and mindset around what do people want to reflect on, and also how do they appreciate what happened to them during their day. And I've seen, if you just search for the hashtag on Twitter, the number 3 and then good things, there's some really great things that people choose to share around that hashtag. And it really shows that, completely depending on what you're facing, you can always reflect on, actually, there were some things today that happened really, really well. So I spoke several probably about a year or two ago with somebody in the network that we know called David D'Souza, and we were just talking about stuff. And I said to him at the time, I want to take the concept of positive psychology and do more with it. And he said, well, at the time I was thinking around developing an app or something, and he said, we'll call it 3 Good. Well, I said, what do you reckon if I call it 3 Good Things? And he said, just shorten it, just call it 3 Good. And then that just stuck with me ever since. And then when I decided I was going to create a podcast, that was the name that immediately came to mind. That's what it can be called, and then lead on from there.
Okay. Yeah. Shout out to David. When he messaged me a couple of weeks ago with some good words of advice and stuff. So yeah, he's a good guy. He
really is.
So I guess when we look at your podcast, I think, are you around about 9 or 10 episodes in now, if I remember rightly? I think.
Yeah, that's right. I'm 9 episodes in.
I mean, and when we look at kind of some of the stuff which you cover like positive thinking. You talk about 4 things. I think one of them was about 4 bad things happen.
Yeah.
The importance of what I mentioned earlier about the community, kindness, and positive psychology. And I guess it's going to be a bit of a hard question for you, this, but which one? Sometimes I think you get something which jumps out to you more than the others, and which one just feels like a bit more flowy. Which one of the episodes so far have kind of, has been an absolute pleasure and not a struggle, I guess, and just flown out?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So I've had 2 guests on the podcast so far, and the other ones have been just me sharing my thoughts and insights and research, and that's available out there that we currently know about. And so I think they all just mean that you approach things in a slightly different way. So when it's just me and I'm talking, I make a set of notes around, right, these are the things I think I want to discuss, and then I just talk around those, and then if I think I'm happy with it, then I'll release it. The ones where I've had guests on, though, I tend to keep those quite unstructured, in that we just talk about whatever we think we want to talk about, and then it allows the conversation to go where it needs to. So I had a guest on, Mark Gilroy. We talked about optimism as a topic, and it was a really good chat. I think we spoke for an hour and 20 minutes or something, or might have been in and around that time. And it was such an easy chat that I didn't even notice at the time had gone through to so long. And last week I spoke with a friend, Sarah Boyd, and we spoke about what does positive psychology look like in practice in organizations. And that was really fascinating because we're both quite into the topic, and she had lots of insights from how she puts it into practice. She'd been to a conference the day before on the topic, so there was lots to get through and talk about. And again, it was just an easy conversation. And for me, that's where the ease of conversation just makes then just makes the flow really nice and easy, and hopefully quite easy to listen to as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, with regard to kind of, and I'll put your podcast in the show notes as well, so people can jump on and subscribe. Highly recommend it. Let's just have a look at kind of some of the things which you mentioned there, and well-being and kind of positive psychology and stuff. Where do you see this being done really well at the moment?
Around well-being. That's a good question. So I certainly see that there's becoming more of a strong focus on it in organizations, to want to support their people to actively think about, are they taking care of themselves so that they're not experiencing, or rather when they're at work, they're able to do more than just do the work. And I think that's because there's a realization that the workplace can be a really enabling place to help people live well. And so part of that means that you have to have a good approach to what well-being looks like. Some organizations do it really well, where they use, I've known some organizations where they will pay for your gym membership for everyone in the company, and so you just have open access to a gym facility. Others, like where I'm at here at Read Business, they have a good approach where every lunchtime there's some kind of different activity you can go and join. And that's really quite encouraging because it's on site, it's during the lunch break, and it's open and it's accessible to people. I see, and then in the kind of personal, or rather the in the social media space, there's lots of good organizations out there who are sharing really good things about how to improve well-being. So a lot of the mental health organizations, the cancer charity organizations, they share some really good information on, if you want to look after yourself, these are good things to do to look after yourself. It kind of gets captured in the self-care narrative. And so there's some really good things that people can do and go and look at to help them understand, yeah, look, if I'm not feeling great, it might be because I'm missing some things in my life, which should be important, but I just haven't given the right kind of focus on. And going away and reading about those things and learning about those things can start to unlock how you think about that. So, it's also a fairly recent concept that's really started to take hold across more groups, where I think, maybe about 15 years ago, it wasn't well heard of. You didn't really hear about well-being at work. It wasn't really something that was considered. And so I think we've come on leaps and bounds in terms of what we think it can enable and how it can be good for people.
Okay. And I think, I was looking at Talk. They fully embrace kind of well-being at work.
Right.
And they was probably one of the companies which jumped out to me, actually. And just, it was different. They embraced it. We have this whole social intranet where people can share like mental health issues and stuff like that. And
that's great.
Yeah, it was just about being transparent.
Yeah.
I think someone did a couple of posts about him struggling with bipolar. I did a couple of posts about kind of dyslexia and dyspraxia and stuff, and kind of how sometimes the modern working environment just doesn't help as much as they like to try and help. It doesn't. They're not putting things in place to do so. But they was awesome because they was just open, honest, and transparent about it, and which made it easier in general just to kind of be open. Sometimes, like I say, it's certain things have stigma to them, and people are still a bit, they don't want to open up. But I think having the environment be as transparent as it is makes everything just so much easier to do that.
It does. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
So let's jump on to kind of diversity and inclusion. Let's jump onto that one. So I think,
okay.
I talked to a whole different people, especially within the group, outside of the group. And one thing which keeps coming up a lot of time is, diversity and inclusion. And we talk about kind of, women within our industry and stuff like that. I guess, share with me a bit of your take on that. So I can kind of, where do you see the kind of the choke points within it, and where do you see it being fully embraced and acknowledged and tackled?
It's a good question, and so what I see is that L&D is no different to any other profession that struggles with getting things right for how they focus on D&I and how we have good practices around it. And where I see it at its most potent is in the conference scene, and this is true of pretty much most conferences that I've been attending and or present at in some way, is that typically you don't tend to see speakers from a Black and minority ethnic background, and they may also struggle with having a balance of men and women speakers where it's normally in favor of men. Yeah. And so and I've written about this for years on my blog. I don't remember when I first started writing about it, but it certainly is one of those things where I've been fortunate enough to attend a lot of different events in all sorts of ways. And the key thing that always I'm attuned to when I'm there is does it look like there's fair representation? Does it look like that there's people like me who are there? And if there are, then in what capacity are they there? Are they there as an attendee? Are they there as a speaker? Are they there as a chair of a session? Are they the organizer? So there's different roles, and I'm not necessarily looking at just who do I spot in the crowd, but in what way do I notice representation? And if there is a lack of representation, then what does that say to me about the event? What's happening in the event? How they're trying to encourage more people from the who are representative of different parts of the society and communities that we all live and work in. And so there's a lot there that I think that we, and like I say, we're no different to any other profession in trying to focus on this. And it can be hard because the L&D world is fairly niche as well. It's a subsection of HR, arguably. And so within that, you've already got you're already starting to whittle down, right, who are the group that are likely to be working in that area. And then once you've then look at just the L&D profession in its broader sense, covering all sorts of roles from instructional designers to experience designers to facilitators to leaders, right? You look across all of that, and you start to realize that's already a finite group of people, and so within that, it then just grows to be harder to look at. Okay, so is there a fair set of representative roles at different levels? A recent piece by Donald Taylor helped to show that at the senior levels of L&D across most organizations, there tend to be more men in those roles than there are women. At the lower levels, it's not the right word, at the kind of less senior roles, you tend to have more women in the roles. And so there seems to be a real disparity there around how representative we think we are in the in our roles and what we do. And then and then from my perspective, I start to look at some of that data and I look at, okay, so I get that and I totally see it. But even amongst the group who tend to be more men, they tend to all be white, middle-aged, and I don't tend to see, or older even, I don't tend to see many from kind of the BME background as men in that group, and or women who are in that group being in those roles as well. So there's just further layers that you start to uncover, and you go, okay, it's there, it's prevalent. It's not necessarily because people are doing it in a discriminatory way. It's, as we're starting to realize with many things around the D&I subject areas, is that it's about the systemic way that things happen in organizations, in industries, in professions, in society. And so there's a number of things that need to be corrected for and unlocked in different ways that allows representative groups to make better inroads into the range of different opportunities that are available to them.
Okay, and I get this is one of them topics which I know which is near and dear to you, and I did do a bit of social stalking on you, so I can have a look at your blog post and see, so yeah,
that's all right. It's all there.
Yeah, it's when I say social stalking, it's in the best possible way, not in the weird way.
Okay. Yeah.
But no, I think it's I think this topic alone, you could easily do a 3-hour podcast on, because I think it's like an onion. The more we get into it, it peel away the top layer, and then there's another layer, like you mentioned. But let's change gears a touch then. So if I was to say to you, right, you can have a billboard. You can have a billboard and you can put it right outside a football stadium or a concert.
Right.
And on this stadium, thousands and thousands of people are going to see this billboard. What message would you put on that billboard for thousands of people to see?
Wow. I don't know.
Okay.
I genuinely don't know. Yeah, I don't know, Danny. It's a good question, and it's one I'm probably going to need to think about some more. And one of the reasons I struggle with that as well is that there's so many messages that you could share that trying to whittle it down to one is quite tough.
Yep.
It's do you know across a range of things that you could ask for people to pay attention to when they're looking at a billboard like that. It's so I'd want to stay away from any kind of advertising or branding or anything like that, and just more something around a message that helps people to connect with others in a different way. And that could be around asking people to like, so the mind campaigns or the time to talk campaigns, they're really effective because they just have a simple message around ask your friend if they're okay. That's a really good message. That's a really good simple message, and it helps reinforce that it's okay to talk about mental health. If it's around something like inclusive practices, it could be a message around don't just ask people to take part, get their opinions and get them to design it with you. Like, okay, that's a good message as well. So I think there's lots of good messages that you could share. It's really hard to think about which one would I want it to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. I got asked this question yesterday when I was doing my podcast. Someone reversed it on me.
Oh yeah.
And I have one which I tend to always use, but because I mentioned it on a podcast, it was like, okay, well, let's look at a different one. And
Okay.
And I ended up going with one which just come to mind, and it was just come to mind in time at the moment. It was just something which I seen which kind of come to mind with stuff which was going on, and it was, you cannot whisper to the wind and not expect the wind to whisper to the trees.
Nice.
Yeah, and I thought people can take that into whatever context they want. I think I've seen it in a book recently, and that's kind of where it stuck from. But the one which would always be my go-to would be, for every minute you are angry, you lose 60 seconds of happiness.
Yeah. That's good. I like that. Yeah.
And I just think it's just kind of, it's nice. It comes from a kind of a little bit of a kind of, not social experiment, but from back in the day, my classroom training days.
Yeah, right.
I used to change the quotes on the front of the door, which would tell you what time you need to be here at. And I wanted to see how many people actually noticed the change.
Nice.
So yeah, it's just something which always stuck out. I just think, happiness is just, it's easy to lose happiness, I think, in a world of constant noise and constant,
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and I just think, I was talking to Babs recently, and Babs mentioned how she's going through a bit kind of a time of blocking some time out to just be with herself in a moment. I thought it's such a powerful thing to just stay away from everything. I mean, I've dabbled with meditation a little bit, and I kind of keep going back and forth with it. But yeah, I think we're in a world now where we're always switched on, and I think we probably need to start addressing the fact of actually having a digital detox and just switching off from everything and just being comfortable with silence and being on your own.
See, I hear people talk about digital detoxes, and I think I don't know if that's the answer to the challenge of being switched on.
Okay.
Yeah, and so where I come from on this is, if when I'm at home and I'm with my kids, or if I'm out with my partner, and there's natural moments during that period of time that I'll be with them where I just won't think about my phone, and it's because in the moment I'm happy to spend that time doing something else. My mind isn't focused on, I wonder if I could share this moment through social media. This could be like more of a product of my age than it is about anything else. But I think there's a truth in there, which is around, if you're engaged in something, or rather, so I think that if you're engaged in something and you don't think about wanting to share that in a digital way, that's okay. And if at some point you go back to it and you think, actually, no, I want to use it, that's okay too. It's and I think because where we're naturally moving to is that we will be connected and we are connected in very accessible ways. I don't see that as the problem. It's more that how do people understand that they can create a balance which works for them? And and then when you start to think about that, it means that you don't have to necessarily go down the detox route because you've already got a good balance of at this time in this way I'm going to do these types of things, and I also recognize that I don't have to do those things all the time, and so that's where I've kind of taken my thinking around interaction with devices, how we're always on with stuff, what we choose to do with them, what that means for my attention, my capacity, my resilience, my being present. So I think I think that if we, or rather, there are natural moments in life that you're with others where you would go, yeah, you know what, right now I'm very comfortable just being here with you, and I don't need to share that in some way with social media.
Yeah, I think for us to have it's easy to go from kind of saying a digital detox is social media, but for me, I think it's a few different things, and it's a real interesting point which you bring up, I guess. So I think for me, I go back to I went through a bit of a bad time probably about 4 years ago, maybe. Let's just call it 4 years ago for argument's sake.
Okay.
And for the life of me, I just couldn't find the spark to get the happiness track back on it. Something happened within my family, and I talk about it in my podcast later on down the line anyway. But I guess for every way I turned, I think it's like I don't want to use depression because I don't think it was depression. I was just in a bad place, I guess.
Okay.
And I thought for every time I turned on to my let's call it digital, for just use that. Be it social media, be it one thing or another. I just constantly seen stuff which put me in an even worse spiral. So I think you find when your head's in that weird space, you tend to always look for other things which kind of either agree to where your head's at right now.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Or stuff what puts you in a situation where you think my life is nowhere near as good as that. And I guess I kind of go back to that situation and think, right, if I didn't have social media, blah blah blah, how would that have been? And realistically, I addressed the problem because I just switched all my social media off. At that time, I just went, right, okay, going to be away from my phone, going to turn all my social media channels off, and I'm just going to go backwards, if you like, in evolution, in the step of how we communicate and stuff. And I just went back. I just spent more time with my family. And I got happiness from the little things. So I started drawing again. I was always a good drawer, so I started drawing again and doodling, and I guess. But for me, the time, I wouldn't have got that if I didn't turn my social media off, because I wouldn't have had the time. It would have been too easy for me to dwell and kind of fill that time.
I totally get you.
Yeah, but I guess it's a good shout. If you're happy within the moment, you don't need to share it. It's a choice, I guess.
Yeah. And so what you also helpfully share there as well, that's really good to hear, really interesting to hear about that from you as well, about how you needed to not be in that space. And that's a choice, right? And that's a choice to say, right, at that time, in that way, it just didn't work for you. Then that's okay. And now, several years later, you're in a space where you're using the set of tools in a very different way. I mean, I'm guessing, and you can correct me on that.
Yeah, it's a good shout.
And that's going to be because you've had your own insights and your own reflections on it. I know when it works for me, and I know when it doesn't work for me. And that's probably more of the set of questions that people need to ask of themselves, which is, when does it work for me? And in those moments, how do I enjoy what it's allowing for? And when it's not working for me, then how do I remove myself so that I can carry on and do other stuff in my life? And I see it, for example, when you see people get drawn into really long, hard difficult language on kind of Twitter arguments and what have you.
Yeah.
And it's because people what they're choosing to do is they're choosing to respond first of all. They're choosing to also get into a really lengthy, drawn out argument, and that's completely the choice of the person to do it. If it's and so there may be some good reasons for it, right? So there may be a good reason to have to do it because the person may be being purposefully offensive or purposely lying or difficult about the message they're trying to put across. So you want to try and correct for that. So there may be a good reason to want to try and be engaged with it at that moment. At the same time, if you're doing that on a regular basis and it's happening a lot, then there's also a realization that needs to come around. Okay, at some point, I need to stop doing that for myself because it's taking me into a certain frame of mind and a certain way of living, which isn't good for me. And I can't stop other people from reacting in the way that they're reacting, but I can definitely improve how I manage myself in those situations.
Yeah, it's a good chat. I think you see this a lot on the reading. You know, some people writing up articles on blog and statuses, and a lot of the writing tends to be very exclusive and not inclusive. I think.
Yeah,
is something I kind of I've seen quite a bit, and sometimes I just think I can't get involved in your conversation because you're at a level which bring it down to kind of I don't know. It just feels sometimes that's done in a purposely way, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And I think it's also indicative then of and you're right to not want to have to get involved in those conversations because in some way that it's going to take you down a certain level of discussion and or response, which is not going to be good for you. And if you recognize that, then you don't have to be involved or you don't have to do that. That's a good choice.
Yeah.
And then equally, if you choose to go down and pursue whatever that is, that's also a very valid choice. It just means that you're going to end up in a certain state of mind, and it'll reinforce a certain set of beliefs which you either want to or you don't want to reinforce as well.
Okay, good chat.
Complicated stuff.
No, and definitely. Again, this is another thing which could be a whole podcast on its own. So, if I was to say to you, right, so you can relive 2 hours of your life. Let's call it, it can be professional or personal, but you'd a bit like Groundhog Day, you'd have to constantly relive these 2 hours of your life. What 2 hours would it be?
What 2 hours of my life would I want to relive? The moment that my children were born.
Okay.
Just the most amazing thing to experience, be part of. I've never experienced anything like that. It's you get so full of I got so full of joyous emotion that I happily wept when my children were born. I was so full of love for my wife, for what she had gone through to be able to carry them, give birth to them, and I was there for all of those for the moments across both when my twins were born and when my daughter was born, twin boys and my daughter. It was just amazing. Yeah, so I think if there was any moment I would want to relive it, it'd be those two moments.
Oh, wow, pretty powerful stuff, right? So I guess we just need to be a bit savvy of your time because I know we're kind of running over. So I'll just jump into two more questions. So people who are people who are in what we do right now. Maybe it's new up and comers. Maybe it's people who people don't know about and have been there for a while. Who's the 3 people who you think people should know about?
Oh, you can't restrict me to 3, Danny. That's just cruel.
I just like making life hard work.
Who are the 3 people that people should know about?
If you like, I can make it to 5, just because we're friends.
Who are they? Who are good people? So there's somebody called Julie Dryborough, who some people may know. Her Twitter handle is @FuchsiaBlue. I've known her now for a number of years, and she is an amazingly good thinker in our space around facilitation, OD, L&D. She really takes the time to understand what's happening in the modern world and how we can take those insights and learnings and apply them in work settings in different ways. So I really value Julie. I value her as a person, and I value the thinking that she has.
Okay.
Phil Wilcox is somebody else. He's a good friend, and I really appreciate his thinking also around L&D and leadership and emotional intelligence, what we understand about that whole topic. He's constantly, I would argue that he is probably one of the most knowledgeable people out there on the whole topic of emotional intelligence, and he just does not sit on his laurels about what he knows. Because the more he ends up knowing and finding out, the more he realizes that there is yet to understand. And I really appreciate that about him, that he hasn't just turned around. He could quite readily turn around and say, I am an expert in this topic, and you should listen to me because I know what I'm talking about. And I would. But he doesn't come at it with that approach. He's very willing and very open to his own limitations of what he could know, and also very confident in what he does know as well. So he's somebody else. Andy Lancaster, head of L&D for the CIPD, is a really, really good guy, really good L&D thinker, has done a lot of good things for the profession since he's been in that role for the CIPD, really helped to develop how the CIPD approaches L&D and what it thinks about it, how it tries to engage with its members around L&D. He's done a lot of good work there, and I have a lot of appreciation for him. I think that the profession would be in a very different place today were he not in that role.
Okay.
Who else? Fiona McBride is somebody else I would make a shout out to. She is a really good L&D practitioner. She really gets how to design good learning interventions, be it programmatic, be it a one-day thing, be it thinking around how to use social media for learning purposes, how to use collaborative tools for developing communities of practice, that kind of thinking. She's got a really good L&D practitioner level head on her. So she'd be the other person. I'm going to stop at 4.
Okay, and that's fine. That's fine. So I guess let's kind of bring it full loop and back around to the beginning. So, right at the start, I asked you to pick up some numbers, which we're going to touch on in just a second. But before we get to that, I asked you at the start, what is it you wanted to be when you grew up, when you was in school? And you said maybe a lawyer, an architect, a pilot, or an astronaut. Yeah. And I think it's so because we never ever stop growing. We never stop developing, and and at no point do we hit an age and go, right, that's it, we're done. So if I was to ask you the question of what do you want to be when you grow up, what would you say now?
I still want to be an astronaut.
Okay.
That hasn't stopped. I'm still ever wondrous about space and what we learn about what's happening in the universe and how that impacts on what we do as a human race. That is just a never-ending bit of fascination for me. So that is something which constantly just amazes me. And if I could do that, that would be brilliant. Yeah, I think that's it there for now.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Okay, well, we'd asked you to pick 4 numbers.
numbers. Yeah.
And these phone numbers retaliate to a random list of items. And the idea is pretty simple. You're on a desert island and you have these 4 items, and all you got to do is just tell me what you do with them. So your items were retaliate to a piece of chalk,
Okay.
a checkbook, a ice cube, and a screw.
Okay. Piece of chalk,
Yep.
an ice cube,
Yep.
and a screw, and what was the fourth one?
A checkbook.
A checkbook.
Yeah.
Okay. A piece of chalk. Okay, and I'm on a desert island, and I mean, if I'm on a desert island, the ice cube would probably melt pretty quick, so I don't think I could do anything useful with that. So that is just, in my mind, that's just become a redundant item pretty automatically.
Okay.
A screw, I think you could probably use to help things be joined together. So if you needed to create some kind of shelter overhead, so something like a canopy or something, you might be able to use a screw to help make that happen.
Okay.
A checkbook. Yeah. Okay. So you could use the leaves to take care of personal business when duty calls.
Okay.
And a piece of chalk. I'm completely stumped on that one. I really don't know.
Okay. Perfect. That's great.
Okay.
You know what'll happen, don't you? It'll come to mind in about 3 hours, and you'll have to scribble it down.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's cool. Yeah.
So I guess where can people find out a little bit more about you and kind of your day-to-day role in life and ideas?
Yeah, I'm very active on social media, especially Twitter. It's my go-to social media channel. So you can find me on Twitter at Sukh Pabial. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there as well. Just my full name, Sukhvinder Pabial. I write a blog, which you can get through either of those places, and I host a podcast, which you can also find through either of those channels as well.
Perfect. I will put them all in the show notes anyway, so that people can get there easier. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been really good to chat, Danny. Thank you very much.
No worries. Catch you later. Thank you.
Bye.